What's up, everybody? So, haven't done much with the hobby recently. Been sick as well as been working a bunch. So, those two things together leaves you very drained. But I did manage to read book seven. And I guess it's good. It took me a bit longer to read it than I would have liked because I had a really sore throat and a weak voice while I was sick. So, I wouldn't have been able to talk about it even if I finished it quicker. So, this is just going to be initial impressions of the book overall. I will be doing a multitude of rambles in the future on Book 7. It's a book I was keenly waiting for, and it covers a bunch of forces I have an interest in and have no problem doing rambles on. Uh, so, Book 7 has a legion that I will be collecting again in it, and that's the Thousand Sons. They were my first pre heresy force I collected back in the day, before we had any real support model wise or such, and it'll be the force I get back into the pre heresy time period with for sure. On top of that, it also has a force that, you know, I've always liked but didn't really have a good way to represent, and that was the Custodian Guard. The Custodian Guard are in Book 7 alongside the Sisterhood of Silence, so that's awesome. So, let me back it up real quick. When Forgel first announced that they were doing the Horus Heresy series, this is the book I was essentially waiting for, the Book of the Thousand Sons in it. And I had a feeling it was going to be the Battle of Prospero. That's typically how the Thousand Sons are talked about in the Heresy time period. And it had me thinking it'll probably be Space Wolves and Thousand Sons in the book that they do. And I imagined that they would mention and maybe even give us a unit for the Sisterhood of Silence and the Custodian Guard, but I didn't think they'd give us a full blown army list for both. They're labeled as Talons of the Emperor, so it's one mega army list, I would call it. But it has elements of the Legio Custodes and the Sisterhood of Silence basically at all different force organization spots. So you can field either a pure sister force of silence, or you can field a pure legio force of custodes, or you could do a mix and match if you wanted to. And just because I feel it's worth mentioning, the Sisterhood of Silence has no connection to the sororitas. Just putting it out there. But anyways, so we got that as well in this book, as well as Thousand Sons in Space of Legion stuff. So that's really cool and makes this book, I think, a really cool buy for a lot of people. It's something that's really interesting. Kind of like how when the Mechanicum had their full army list rules in one of the Horus Heresy books for the first time, was kind of like a hidden gem there. This is not so much a hidden gem, but still a gem in this book. That if you bought the book purely for Talons of the Emperor, it would be worth it, in my opinion. So this book had expectations to live up to, and it definitely, I feel, did for me at the very least. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Um, it goes back in the timeline before the Josite Massacre, before Isfin 3, to the Battle of Prospero. This happened during the Great Crusade proper, at the later stage of the Great Crusade, but there was no heresy war being fought. Horus was still perceived to be loyal by the Imperium at large, even if maybe he was acting in a different way secretly. But he's still the war master of the Great Crusade and still viewed in that light. Uh, Isfin 3 hasn't happened yet. In fact, the Council of Nicaea only recently happened, or Nicaea, however you want to pronounce it, and this book covers that because it's kind of the setup for why the Thousand Sons were attacked in this way by the Emperor. So, this book does a good job, in my opinion, of really underlining the word tragedy that describes what happened at the Battle of Prospero. The Thousand Sons were not heretics per se, in terms of how we would think of them. They were loyal to the Imperium, Magnus loyal to his father, but because of events that they did and matters that Magnus took into his own hands to try and tell the Emperor about psychically, which was the big no-no, um, it forced the Emperor's hand. And therefore we have the tragedy therein of the Thousand Sons. Now, is it a bigger tragedy than the Horus Heresy that would follow it? In scope, no, but I would say it's a bit more of an intimate, bit more of a cuts deeper tragedy on a personal level, you could say, versus the huge galaxy ramifications of the Horus Heresy. So it's got a different appeal to it in terms of tragedy than the Horus Heresy, but it's not going to eclipse it. But it did happen first. It was a precursor, you could say, to what was to come. So we get good fluff done in the imperial centric documentary style. So that means we're blind on purpose to certain events that unfold in, let's say, the Horus Heresy novel series, because it wasn't an imperial centric view, so we wouldn't have access to it written in this documentary style. But it's okay, you're not lost for what's going on. If you had no idea of what the Battle of Prospero was about before, just in reading Book 7, you'll have an idea of what's going on, you won't feel lost. So that's all well and good. It covers the counts of Nicaea, or what have you. It covers what happened when Magnus psychically tried to warn the Emperor, or could do something psychically, as it's mentioned in the book. We have the mentioning of the size of the censor host and who is in it, as well as the forces on Prospero proper. And we get to see the little bit of updates that Forgil has done to the Battle of Prospero. We get the Legio Mortis Titan Legion detachment there. We got a force of Ordo Sinister Psi Titans there, Warlord class, of course. We have Legio Custodes, the Sisterhood of Silence, and Imperial Auxilia forces. We have the Space Wolves present as well, and a detachment of Sons of Horus legionaries. And none of this added stuff takes away from the thunder of the Space Wolves versus Thousand Suns. That's still the hot topic item of the Battle of Prospero. Other stuff is more in a support ancillary role and not really made mention of too much and doesn't really get in the way, if you will. So, I don't mind the addition of that stuff. It's there. The Sons of Horus force is doing some shady dealings in the background, kind of a implying intent perhaps on the Horus's part, kind of showcasing perhaps he was getting ready even then to betray the Imperium or what have you, which by fluff standards he would have been, so it would make sense. But the Imperium doesn't know that. But those are all forces that are attacking the Thousand Suns in essence, and the Thousand Suns have, a Titan force on their side. Somewhere else, not at the battle proper. They got a bit of Forge World stuff going on their side as well, with a mechanical Forge World ally to them. They have some Imperial Auxilia and Spire Guard presence, of course, as well as themselves. So we get a nice account for all the different forces involved and the battle being taking place. So, and that's where the book basically stops. It stops at the conclusion of the Siege of Prospero. Once the Imperial forces are victorious and the battle is done, there's a little bit of an epilogue, you could say, about the ramifications of said battle, but that's it for the fluff of the book in terms of the campaign as representing. Of course, we have campaign rules. Always cool to see Forge World campaign rules for stuff. And then we get into the fluff of the units that were present at the event and so on. So we get Space Wolves, Legio Custodes, Sisterhood of Silence, Thousand Suns, and so forth. The fluff for the Sisterhood of Silence and the Legio Custodes is really cool. It's always nice to get more fluff on these forces, or just fluff in general on these two. We have army lists for them, full-blown army lists, which are awesome. We have the Warlord Psi Titan of the Ordo Sinister represented, which is awesome. I'll never have one because I'll never be able to afford a Warlord Titan, but if I were able to, if I ever became rich out of nowhere, I would build it as a Psi Titan if I bought one at all. But anyways, so we have that going on. We have Mechanical and Tag Magi forces represented. I believe it's the army list with some added stuff. I don't know if it's a full army list or not, but it's definitely army list size in terms of being in the book. The Talons of the Emperor, as I mentioned already, for Legio Custodes and Sisterhood of Silence, either pure one or the other, or a combined force thereof. And of course, we have Legion rules for the Thousand Suns and the Space Wolves, as well as their fluff. I am not a Space Wolf fan. I make no bones about it. I'm not ashamed of it. I will gladly do rambles as to why. Even though I've done one already, I'll gladly do more. But of pre to post heresy Space Wolves, I prefer the Legion Space Wolves a bit more than the post heresy Space Wolves. Still not a fan of them per se, but I prefer them over their post heresy counterparts. I like the concept of them being the Emperor's executioners. I like the concept of Leman Russ tempering their almost unstable battle lust type of situation they had, and I think they do a good job without being too over the top in the ways that I don't like Space Wolves being. And I think they do a good job of reminding you that they're Astartes. It's so easy, especially if you're not a fan of Space Wolves, to just make the jokes that they're mindless, savage brutes. But at their core, they are Astartes. They have the same, you know, makeup biologically as other Astartes. They have the sharpened mind and the sharpened body and all that. So they are Astartes. And this book does a good job of reminding you of that. So that's cool. On the flip side, it also does a good job of reminding you of that for the Thousand Sons, because while you have the potential stereotype of mindless brute savages of the Space Wolves, you have the other stereotype for the Thousand Sons being meek sorcerers, basically. Um, and the book does a good job of telling you, hey, don't forget they're Astartes. They have that sharpened body as well as that sharpened mind and their psychic capability. They're a very formidable force. It's not just that they're psychers, so they lack in other ways. They're still Astartes, and the book does a good job of reminding you there as well. So, as I said in the beginning of this ramble, there'll be more rambles to go in depth on certain topics for Book 7. I plan to do a bunch of rambles for Book 7 because it's got a lot of stuff I like in there and a lot of stuff I want to ramble about. So, when it comes to initial impression wise, that's basically it without getting bogged down in details and specifics. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, however. Not no book is perfect, and there are a couple of instances where I feel there's a little bit of a letdown with this book. No means a deal breaker, but one of them is for Space Wolf fans. I'm not a Space Wolf fan. I still feel it's a little bit of a letdown. No Bjorn. I didn't see any mentioning of Bjorn in all the stuff that I've read through of that book. Um, no mentioning of him. No special character entry. Doesn't mean he's never going to have one. There's always a possibility in a future book there'll be a couple of extra Space Wolf special units or characters, and Bjorn could be one of them. But we got Giger. Now, Giger is the Burning of Prospero box set guy that everybody thought was Bjorn, myself included. And he's got rules from Forge World for the Horse Heresy 30k game. And yeah, I get it. But at the same time, Bjorn was there. Bjorn's in the novels. Bjorn's got his codex fluff stating how he's from the Great Crusade time period. All the stuff that would make you think if there was one special character named Dude outside of the Primarch that you would expect to see in the Horse Heresy books from Forge World, it'd be Bjorn. And he's not in it. So that was a little bit unfortunate, even though I'm not a Space Wolf fan. He has gravitas to him. He should be in it. And I think that Giger is ultimately kind of a letdown. He might be a fine character. I don't know. I don't know too much about him from the Burning of Prospero, just what's in Book 7, which isn't that much either. So he could be cool, I guess, but he's no Bjorn. So there's that. The other letdown I have, you could say, if you want to even call it that, it's more of a nitpick letdown, is no Spire Guard units or anything. They'd be Imperial Auxilia, but they're Prospero PDF / Imperial Auxilia forces setup. So they would have, psychic capability and whatnot, and to have them mentioned in the fluff extensively, but not have them anywhere else mentioned in terms of unit entry or anything like that, it is a little bit of a disappointment for me, not because I wanted to field them, but because it would be cool to see what they would have gotten rules wise or artwork wise or something like that. Would have been pretty neat. So I'm guessing Imperial Auxilia, I don't remember its specifics too much. You could build it to fit in with the theme of the Spire Guard. It just would have been cool to get some actual Spire Guard stuff. So it was just two kind of like disappointing things for me personally, but it doesn't make or break Book 7 at all. It's still definitely worth purchasing if you have an interest in Space Wolves or Thousand Sons or the Talons of the Emperor. Any of those big three right there, the book is worth purchasing just for one of those interests. So definitely worth looking into if you haven't done so already. So that's going to be it for this initial impressions ramble. Plenty more to say in future rambles, however, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for sticking through it. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, leave them in the comments section. And until next time, take it easy.